GM, everybody. Hope everyone's having a good day. See a ton of familiar faces down there. A lot of people joined really quickly. I started it a minute early. It's always surprising to see them fill up this fast. I'm going to be talking about some exciting developments today with our friends from Arbitrum. See Steven, I see AJ, I see SizeChad. Bring them all up here. GM, my friends, Steven, AJ, how are you doing?
Hey, what's going on? Thanks for having us.
Hey, great to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I retweeted the announcement yesterday, and SizeChad was like, "You want to host a space?" And I'm like, "Absolutely. I'm a bit busy today, but are you guys free tomorrow?" And next thing I knew, boom, we have space. So
here we are.
Excited to talk to you, and super thankful for you guys taking the time out of your day to come talk to me.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you.
You took a risk. You're the first person to ever tell Size not now, maybe later.
He put me in my.
He's not used to that.
No, he's not.
Pretty size risk he took there.
Yeah, it's easier to take the risk through DMs. If he was in person, much more formidable presence, I probably would have just been like, "Yeah, let me just cancel the next 4 hours of things, and we'll just that's it."
You guys are too much, but thanks again for hosting these. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no, I mean, you guys are building in a bear, and this is a pretty big announcement. And as somebody who cares a lot about the gaming side of where NFTs are going, personally, I'm excited to dig into everything Arbitrum Nova. I pinned the announcement thread to the top for people who have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. I mean, I'm gonna ask questions and dig into it as we go, but if you want a brief on what Arbitrum Nova is, check out the pinned Medium article, and I will also pin the thread you guys did today with the shoutouts. I thought that was pretty helpful. But yeah, I guess to get started, what the hell is Arbitrum Nova?
Okay, great. I will take that. Yes. So Arbitrum Nova is a new chain that we launched yesterday, and this is a chain that's optimized for gaming and social applications, and it's built on the Arbitrum AnyTrust technology. So Arbitrum Nova is the name of the chain. Arbitrum AnyTrust is the name of the technology that it's built on, and to cut to the chase, what it gives you is really high security, but ultra low fees. So, and the reason why I say it's optimized for gaming and social is, Arbitrum One, our roll-up chain, which most of you are familiar with probably as just Arbitrum, as people call it colloquially. That is a roll-up, and it puts all the data on Ethereum, and it's great, and it's on average about 97% cheaper than Ethereum for most transactions. But a lot of gaming developers are in a situation in which they want it to be even, they need fees that are even less. And it's not because they don't believe in security and decentralization. They're like, hey, that's amazing. It's just like my users can't pay still 10 or 20 or 30 cents for a transaction. It just doesn't work because, in 2022, gaming is often game first and blockchain second, which is great, right? So we want to appeal to a wide user base, and you want a game to be fun. And often for users, if you're draining their wallet, particularly with high interaction, high frequency games, might not be that fun. So a lot of gamers are in a position where they had to choose often previously between security and low cost. And I can talk to these teams for today to tomorrow. And they're like, yeah, dude, I believe you. I want security. I like high security. It's just I can't. I still even at like way cheaper than Ethereum, I still can't afford these transaction fees for our users. So our question was, hey, can we have a solution that's optimized for gaming and social, these highly interactive, cost sensitive applications that doesn't make them make this decision between having a high cost that are often too high for the user or security. And Arbitrum Nova is the solution there, and it gives you a high security chain backed by the Arbitrum AnyTrust technology, but also ultra low cost transactions. We're talking like ETH transfers are sub cent, and really I think moves the space forward. So now game developers can build their games in the Ethereum ecosystem on Arbitrum Nova and have their cake and eat it too.
Let's fucking go. I think for me personally, I just get all riled up with games. Like, I feel like you're 100% right. We need to focus on the game, not the blockchain. Going back to the any trust technology, I think that's really interesting and something I'm not super familiar with myself, and maybe a lot of the audience isn't familiar with. What exactly is the any trust technology, and how does that allow all these multiple chains to come up from it?
So the antitrust technology is very, very similar to the roll-up technology. The key difference is in the roll-up technology, all the transaction data is posted on chain. And it turns out that even though we're about 97% cheaper than Ethereum, if a transaction on the rollup is about 30, 40, or 50 cents, the majority of that cost is actually paid to Ethereum to store data. So if your transaction is 50 cents, 35 cents or so might be paid to Ethereum to store data or more. And the question then becomes, can we somehow bypass that and not post all the data on Ethereum? And Arbitrum AnyTrust is an elegant solution that uses a data availability committee to store data. It is any trust, as its name suggests, which says, hey, you just have to trust one or two of these committee members, and everything that they'll store your data, and they won't, get rid of your data, and everything from there follows. Everything else, like it happens just as on the roll up. So if there's a challenge or a fraud proof that happens on Ethereum, the execution hashes are on Ethereum, settlement happens on Ethereum. You can bridge back and forth to Ethereum. It's just a matter of taking this data and moving it from Ethereum to this committee. And all you need to know is that someone in this committee is going to keep my data around, or one or two people are going to keep my data around. And one thing we did with this change, you want to really give users a committee that you have high confidence in. But and so one thing we did was we partnered with some of the biggest names in Web 2 and Web 3 to serve on this data availability committee. So we have we're on it. Reddit's on the committee. Google Cloud is on the committee. FTX, P2P, as well as Consensus, and I probably missed one, but AJ, pop in there if I missed one.
Quick
But
notes. Quick notes.
quick
on it
note. Oh
too.
yes, quick note. Of course, is on the
And
committee.
we'll be adding more over time.
And we'll be adding more over time. But the idea is, as a user, you only need to trust that a small minority of this committee is doing the right thing, and that's really, I guess, from a technical point. I don't want to get too technical. A quick key difference between us and a sidechain. In the sidechain, you have to trust the majority or a super majority of the nodes. So if you have like 1/3 of the validators of a sidechain doing the bad thing, they could steal money, they could take money out of accounts. It can get really, really bad. And that's why when you think about, hey, should I add nodes to a sidechain? You have to be careful because you don't want to add too many bad guys, or you don't want to add, a coalition that can team up and create bad things to happen. With any trust, that calculus doesn't exist because you only have to trust one or two nodes to do the right thing. So I can say, hey, add all these nodes. You say, I don't like it. Doesn't matter. You can think that these are all terrible people. They all do the wrong thing. But as long as the one or two that you trust are still there, everything works well, and that's why it's called any trust, the technology. You don't really have to care who else is in the committee, as long as the ones you trust are there. You know that the chain will operate correctly, and with these names in it, I think most users can have a really, really high level of trust, and from there everything happens to Ethereum. And actually, one question is, what if the committee fails, like it stops storing data? Well, no problem. At that point, it just falls back to roll up mode. So the idea is, when the committee does its job, everything sort of uh, stays really cheap. If the committee stops doing its job, the chain doesn't die or have any issues. We don't rely on the committee that much. All that happens is that things revert to roll-up mode. But optimistically, when the committee does its job and we have a high-powered and highly reputable committee, things stay quite cheap, and users can enjoy those cheap transactions and not have to give up on their security to do so.
I love that. I think that's so powerful. You're basically saying, like, hey, if you trust Google Cloud or FTX or QuickNode, like, you can trust that your data here is secure, and you don't need to um, worry as much about the decentralization aspect, as it is still going back to ETH as well. It's not like you're just trusting 7 or 8 people or whatever.
You're trusting them, just that to know that one of them will keep your data around. You're not trusting like the settlement or the execution that and the fraud proofs is all happening on ETH. You're trusting them for a really quite limited role, and that's why I think it's really a great solution. It is a trade-off. It's not Arbitrum One, and I think Arbitrum One is still the right place for DeFi. But again, for those that don't have the luxury of making that decision of saying, yeah, I believe in security, but I just can't do that, it's a great option to keep very high security and also have low cost.
No, I love
I
that.
think that's an important point, right? The way we're sort of marketing this, and we can talk about sort of Reddit announcement, is that these are synergistic and like sister chains in the sense that we're not telling power DeFi users take your funds off of a roll up, put them on an any trust chain. We're saying we've sort of interacted with the community for a year now, and there are many verticals that are just too cost sensitive for everything, including call data, to go to Ethereum. And they were faced between the decision between a side chain, a roll up, or ETHL1, and we just think this is a much more elegant solution for those use cases.
No, I think that's a good place to jump off into the Reddit partnership with the community points, the moons. I definitely think that was the main partnership that caught my attention yesterday. Like, Reddit is massive. And I definitely am curious to hear, like, how did the relationship come about with them, and how did you get them to work with you, like you said, on Nova without them using something like Matic or Solana or just like another option?
So the way the relationship started actually was 2 years ago, July. So almost, exactly 2 years ago, Reddit put out essentially a call for proposals, but they called it the Great Reddit Scaling Bake Off. And they basically said, hey, we have this really cool thing, this cool called Community Points, and it's going to be massive, and we're going to need to scale this. And so we don't really know how to do this today. We need other teams to submit, their tech to help us scale this, at Reddit scale. And they put this out last, 2 Julys ago, so July of 2020, and we threw our name into the hat, as did 20 plus other projects. Many of the big Ethereum of our competitors or alternative ones of today actually submitted back then. But the nice thing is, Reddit had has a very competent team to diligence this, and they took their time. They spent months diligencing this and looking into the teams. We were contacted by them several months later, asking us, a bunch of questions, and then those interactions became more frequent as they were doing diligence on us. And it was last July, actually, so a year after they initially did this call for proposals, the Great Reddit Scaling Bake Off, and we submitted our proposal, that they announced, hey, we reviewed these 20 plus proposals, and we're rolling with Arbitrum, and Arbitrum is going to scale. We're going to work with Arbitrum to scale Community Points, and then from there, it was really a year of us, working together, really, coordinating pretty closely on a very regular basis, to make sure that we had a solution that could meet Reddit scale. And what emerged from there was, again, this need for, their team took security, took decentralization very, took it very seriously, and considered it very strongly. And they said we need, they wanted to be in the Ethereum ecosystem, they wanted the strong security, but again, they also wanted something that was not going to be cost prohibitive, that would allow users to get these community points and interact with them and transfer them, etc. And also, I think one of the key things that Arbitrum has to offer is the full EVM environment, right? So Arbitrum is the most EVM compatible or EVM equivalent environment that exists. And the nice thing about that is, it's not just Reddit launching community points, right? So you can be a game developer and say, hey, I'm going to launch a game on Nova, and actually I want Reddit community points to be the currency of my game, right? That's like totally doable because it's an open system. It's a public open chain, right? It's not Reddit's chain. It's Arbitrum Nova, and Reddit's launching on it. And now another developer can launch on it, and they can say, hey, I want to give status. I want to value Reddit's community points and make that part of my ecosystem. So I think Reddit's community points is not only a product in and of itself, and not only an important part of organizing these communities, but I think it's more than that, because it's a foundation which others can build on top of and build interactions with these community points. And that's when that was also key to them, this idea of open technology that others can interact with. And it was a year in the making, lots of calls and hard work, from our team, from their team, really an incredibly strong team that they have of great engineers. And that was the culmination of what you saw in yesterday's announcement.
That's awesome. I love the perspective of, that was 2 years in the making. I love that they put out a public proposal that 20 plus teams, competed for, and they chose Arbitrum. Like that signals to me so much. I have a lot of respect in Reddit's due diligence, and I think they have that decentralization slant that some other bigger Web2 communities don't have. So I was so happy to read that yesterday morning. I was like, fuck yes. Like I was texting Sobi and just, shit posting. But
Yeah,
on,
and
on
it's actually interesting. I forgot one thing I forgot to mention is they did one other announcement maybe a year and a half ago, and they said, okay, we've decided we're going with Ethereum, and that's another interesting point to flag, which is Arbitrum is an extension of Ethereum. So Reddit decided they're going with Ethereum, and the actualization of that was building on Arbitrum. I think that's a really important thing, which we'll see more and more, where Arbitrum and rollups generally become like the retail layer for Ethereum, where we are Arbitrum is Arbitrum, but Arbitrum is also the path for many to Ethereum.
I love that. It makes so much sense too. And I'm just now going through the post from a year ago on Reddit, reading, when they chose scaling community points with Arbitrum and why they chose Ethereum and all that. And I do see all this right there. I didn't, sadly, I guess I didn't go down this rabbit hole and just till being on this call. But yeah, I mean, they lay it on post for it, so like anyone on Reddit can see. They even bolded. It's decentralized, it's developer friendly, and it has the biggest ecosystem support. It's like all right there. I think that just makes me so happy to see. You guys had some other interesting partners as well. It wasn't just Nova. I think the second bigger one that caught my eye was FTX and that partnership with FTX Pay. I think like now people will just be able. Do I understand that correctly? Like if they're on Reddit, they can just pay with their credit card and it all works through FTX Pay. Is that correct or no? Do they have to still do some onboarding?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think they, in their announcement, they said it's not working in the iOS app, but like in the web and in the Android app for sure. You can just literally from the Reddit app buy Ethereum buy Ether on Nova. And the idea is users will get their community points, but they might want Ether to have for gas to further interact with these points, to transfer them, to swap them, to buy stuff on the chain. So you can do that all, So FTX is obviously supporting Arbitrum Nova by directly onboarding to the chain, but they're also, the cool thing is they're directly integrated into Reddit and the app. So you can go ahead and yeah, just like that, buy Ether on Nova right from the app, which is like super, super cool. And, why is it cool? Because we're bringing in new users to this to Arbitrum and to Ethereum. And people say, I'm sure you've heard these a million times, like, oh, how do we reach like the next billion users? And to me, this is how we reach the next billion users. It's not like me going on Twitter and trying to reach a billion users. It's by tapping into communities of literally a billion users and bringing them to the blockchain. That's how we bring blockchain to a billion users, by tapping into the communities. I think Reddit's a pioneer, but I don't think they're the last. And I think that's what we're seeing here today. And so it's important, though, when you want to reach masses of users that are touching the blockchain for the first time, it's important to make it easy for them. That's why, one thing about Arbitrum Nova, which is great, is the low fees. The other thing is also the fast confirmations, right? So users, users of Reddit, typical Web 2 users, haven't maybe made the foray into Web 3 yet. They're probably like me, which is you press like search on Google, and if within like 200 milliseconds you haven't gotten a response, you say, what is going on here? And you refresh the page, right? That's not going to work, with a layer one system, even like the best system like Ethereum, where you have a 15-second or so delay, right? So getting the user experience, these fast confirmations, low fees, is how I think we onboard users into the space. The FTX integration is a part of that. If users don't know, hey, okay, I have these community points, how do I get ETH in my wallet? How do I pay gas? Right? You have to make this really, really integrated for users. So the fact that FTX is supporting this directly in the app is crucial. And again, this is to me the reality of a billion users is a meme, but it becomes real when you actually tap into a community of that size.
I think one thing here that's pretty cool is that if you take a look at what sort of Reddit did yesterday, so they 2 community points they migrated, programs they migrated on DomainNet yesterday. That was the Moons and Bricks, which is for the Fortnite community. They basically onboarded 165,000 wallets into the Moons ecosystem and 85,000 wallets into the Bricks ecosystem. Like that's day one of this initiative, and that's what I'm super excited about. Like Steven was saying, you don't get to a billion people, at the at the protocol level. You have to do it at the application level with working with teams that can scale, that have scale, and on day one, that's just a lot of people that are interacting on chain. A lot of them probably for the first time.
No, it's a great point. I feel like Reddit was such a natural partner in hindsight. I spent so much time on Reddit before I found cryptocurrency, and then after finding cryptocurrency, I spent like no time on Reddit. It was this 180 where I would go to Reddit for all my information, and then once I realized like the information I read about crypto on Reddit was completely off, I was like, oh shit, like maybe all the other stuff I'm reading is completely off. And then next thing you know, you're just like getting Twitter anon news, and that's even worse because it's a whole cesspool of shit. But I feel like my personal Reddit journey, like I kind of want to go back to Reddit just to mess around with Moons. I don't know. Like I feel like I logged into my account yesterday for the first time in a while. So I kind of forgot it existed and was poking around, and it made me kind of interested in Reddit again. I'm sure there's not that many people who are like crypto centric and don't care about Reddit who are going to go back to Reddit, but I might be somebody who checks out at least where the community point are. At least like those are interesting to me now.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that makes me excited as well is you think, another way to think about this whole thing, of what it is. So you have like social communities, and now they have these tokens essentially that are like being given to those that participate. It feels very very much like a DAO. And if you flip this whole thing on its head, it almost feels like Reddit is going to become a great tool for DAOs to organize, right? So it's another really interesting angle to this. You can view this as a very crypto native way. Wow, now you can integrate in Reddit, and you have your token distribution happening based on real metrics of contributing to this community. Like that feels very much like an optimal DAO to me.
Side chat, I haven't heard too much from you since we started. What's been the most exciting part of building Nova and helping these partnerships come together on your end?
Well, I will not take credit for building Nova, that's for sure. But what I will say, I think like the most difficult thing that like any protocol or blockchain can do is like you have to ask yourself, well, all this tech is great, but how do you onboard users, right? That's like the most difficult thing, and typically, that's done with either liquidity farming or paying people to build on your protocol and just from this partnership with a massive Web2 company that brings a ton of users on. I think that's huge. I know that Steven touched on this before, but it's something that definitely took a while. I know that Steven and AJ have been working tirelessly on this, and hopefully this helps us grow some more grassroots communities. I know that we're going to make a big push with sort of hopefully some more IRL events and really try and form this grassroots Arbitrum community, because I think that we can all agree that tech is strong. Looking forward to kind of just getting a bunch of people stoked on Arbitrum.
Is there any alpha on any potential public partnerships in the works that I may have missed that we could drop, or is everything else hush hush after the announcement?
I'll say this. I think we have. Obviously Reddit was the big bang to start with, and is very very exciting one in the community. But it is a public chain, and it's a public chain that fills a good need. I guess one piece of alpha is we granted over 100 teams early access to this chain to be building. Some of them you saw go live yesterday, like Reddit and Sushi and some others, but other ones, particularly on the gaming space, are queued up. And I don't necessarily know exact launch dates for all of them, but we know that some really really exciting teams building on the chain, and so stay tuned for future announcements there. But we know some really really exciting ones in the pipeline.
Yeah, one thing I would add, I think this is really important, goes back to the earlier point I had, was rollup wasn't for everybody. And for the longest time, we had one core product, the Arbitrum rollup protocol, where it was very expensive. Call data, comparatively, call data is expensive to post on Ethereum. And there were a lot of projects that, especially on the gaming side or, high volume traffic NFT projects that we were working with. And, we were building AnyTrust in stealth, mainly, because we were working with Reddit and sort of their launch strategy was stealth. And we told them, like, look, we don't think Rollup is the best technology for what you're doing. We're going to be having something soon without too much detail about what we're building. And a lot of those conversations have already been sort of restarted with teams that sort of were looking at other solutions, and we're building up. I think the Arbitrum 1 launch last year was like this massive bang because everyone was kind of excited for it. We had a 3-month period where nobody except for developers were kind of hacking and getting ready. And this launch strategy is a little bit different. This was a lot of focused strategically on sort of making sure that the Reddit community can onboard seamlessly to start, and obviously building up an ecosystem. Without necessarily distracting from Arbitrum 1. So there's a lot of work that we've been doing in the background. I wouldn't say any sort of major games are imminently going live, but we've been having a ton of conversations. But we were pretty frankly like telling certain teams that we wanted these projects to succeed. We didn't think Arbitrum 1, the roll-up, was the best fit for them. And before this went live, we were pretty intellectually honest about sort of our strategy. So we, much as I don't like telling people to use other technologies, like we had conversations where I said candidly to teams that, certain other technologies make more sense for you now until sort of the AnyTrust technology is live. Now that it's live, and we've been already having these conversations for a few weeks now, we're really picking up steam again on the gaming and social side.
No, I think that's so important as a builder in a space to be honest with potential users of whatever product, platform, protocol you're building, because once you burn that trust with someone, like it's hard to get back. And if you're honest with a team and you're saying, hey, right now it isn't the best solution, but if you wait a few months and look around, like you might see something better here, they're also going to trust you more and be more willing to implement that new solution that you provide. I feel like I've had the same experience with the year I've had at Fractional, and just being honest about people, artists, collectors, whatever, and what experiences they might have, whatnot.
100%. My thought on this, to be honest, is it's really about time horizons, right? If you're thinking about sort of the Arbitrum strategy for growing ecosystem on a decade or multi-decade horizon, you're not going to burn that, right? Because everyone talks in this space and it's so small right now. If I tell someone like, yeah, use Arbitrum, it's great. They're like, wait, I'm doing 350,000 transactions a day and the Arbitrum rollup costs, I don't know, 20 cents in transactions you're posting on Ethereum. My business model doesn't work for that. You don't get that back, like you said. And we have a very long horizon. Ed started researching rollup technology in 2014. Our chief scientist, we've been working for Reddit for 2 years on just this one project. And, as a policy, our team's not going to be looking to sort of burn bridges or relationships over like a 3-month head start on partnership announcements. When if you look at the numbers and the data, if we're really talking about bringing the blockchain to the world, it's like the earliest of early adopters. So that's our thought on this. And if it means that it takes more time to onboard people into Nova because they're less familiar with the RP ecosystem, in many ways I'm okay with that, because especially in the Web2 side, right? There's so many skeptics. There's so many people who enter the blockchain space that are suspicious about NFTs, what NFTs can do for their communities, for their ecosystems. The value of in the gaming world, right? Like, why are we interacting with NFTs? Let's just have fun games. And we're in a very sensitive place of where we don't want to be selling something that we can't deliver on as an entire ecosystem, and that's a core principle that I have.
No, I align with that so well. I feel like when I talked last year and all that with you guys and was able to invest, I was like, well, fuck, like this is a no-brainer. Everything you guys say, I see that ideologically and completely agree with it. We're coming up a half hour in. Do you mind if we do like a Q&A? Might open up the stage for some friends. I see a bunch of familiar faces down there, and would love to, maybe get some questions from the audience.
That sounds awesome.
All right, yeah. If anybody wants to request, throw up your hand, and if not, I'm going to spam some friends I see down there with invites to speak anyway, as I always do. So give it a second. See the smalls. Anyone with a small avatar just automatically gets invited up. I don't even need to know them. No due diligence. See Slat down there. All right. Did I get rogue? No.
Bullish. We answered everything up front. Oh, maybe not.
Well, I feel like your documentation is so good. Not only the announcement, but then like going to your site and looking at the docs. Like it's all laid out. Everything's hyperlinked, super clean. I feel like you guys just do a really good job on presenting all of that so well. But welcome, Only Off. How are you doing?
Hi. Just maybe simply, could you explain why there needs to be a new Arbitrum chain?
Hey, sure. AJ, you want to take that?
No,
or
go for it. Go for it.
Happy to take that. Yeah, so I think it gets back to what we were saying before, which is, and to echo what AJ was just saying, this idea of one solution doesn't necessarily work for everyone. And what we were seeing before is even with Arbitrum, roughly depends on the transaction, but 97% cheaper than Ethereum. That's great. And for a lot of projects, that's all that they need. For many DeFi projects, right? The fees at that point are the noise compared to many of the other considerations of what's being transferred and what so it works. But for gaming projects and and social projects, so particularly projects with I guess with three features: one, high volume of on-chain interactions; two, have users that may not necessarily be so care so much about the blockchain, or it's not the number one reason why they're there. And three, they're particularly cost sensitive. Because of that, the roll up solutions weren't working for them. So you can go ahead and have sort of a philosophical and value based debate, like, no, you should care more. You should only launch on Arbitrum One or on a roll up only, no matter who you are. But like in practice, that's not the way the conversation was going. It was going, okay, so we'd love to be in Ethereum, but we can't because, right? It's always the conversations they're having is, I'm going to go to this side chain, not because I want to be here, because this solution is not working for me. And it's not working for me because maybe the fees are too high, and it just doesn't work for my product. So what do you say to those people? You say goodbye and we'll lose you, or do you say no? We can give you a very high security solution. It's not quite the roll up, but it's a very high security solution, but that's cost competitive with the ultra low cost, low fee chains. That fills a real need in the market, because then these developers, these gaming applications that want to be in Ethereum, but just couldn't make the economics work before, but they want that security, can have a very high security solution and not have to make that trade off and say, okay, I guess I'm going to go to a compromise in security because the economics just don't work otherwise. So that's why. And I think we have two different technologies with two different trade off points. Arbitrum One is the perfect home for DeFi, for many NFT projects as well. Arbitrum Nova is probably the right place for gaming and social applications that are catering to a broader audience, that are fee sensitive, and but still want high security, and that's why we have these two environments.
Okay, thank you.
Definitely.
I think you laid that out perfectly. Tyler and Akon, welcome to the stage.
Hey guys. So I got a question about Nova, of course. there's a couple things launching on it. One of my questions is there going to be a lot of Nova chains, or is everything going to be built on one as things scale? And two, you say it's like for gaming, but let's say Bored Ape Yacht Club other side comes on the Nova chain, and there's $1 million plots of land. Is like how safe are those assets compared to Arbitrum One?
It's a very good question. The answer is, the assets I think are quite safe, right? So, if you have the spectrum between, an alternative layer one side chain with its own consensus and a roll up the other side of the spectrum, we're a lot closer to a roll up. Is it a roll up fully? No. So for projects that have very that can afford, right, that are dealing with high volume or high value and potentially low volume interactions and can't afford that extra security, I think it's definitely worth it. So I don't want to comment on any particular projects and trade-off space they make. I do think there's value to that additional security, but in practice, you know, the target audience for Nova are not those that are saying, I'm going to go to Arbitrum One or Nova. The target audience for Nova are those that are saying, I'm going to go to a sidechain because that's all that works. And now it's going to be I'm going to go to a sidechain or Nova, and Nova makes a lot of sense. So again, will there be some overlap? Probably, but I think also the other thing that drives this is the communities, right? So DeFi wants to be with DeFi, and there's a massive DeFi stronghold on Arbitrum One, and there's good reason for that. I think there's good reason that will continue. So there might be one project that would, make a different trade-off, but the sort of community pressures and the community decision to stay there for DeFi is going to be very, very instrumental in maintaining that base as well. I don't know, AJ, if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think there's not so much to add. I think, for example, we saw Sushi yesterday, announce support for the Nova chain, and I think what their target is, there is going to be, swap requirements for the Moon tokens for Reddit and anybody else who wants to live there. So there's going to be certain infrastructure components that are going to, remain on the Nova chain that you might sort of think of as traditional DeFi, but in reality are just sort of tools for, on-chain interaction. But the core liquidity, I would think, would live on the roll-up technology. It will be interesting to see, like your example with, like, something like other side, for example, which is, gaming or social and interact. I think the analysis that a lot of teams will do is, and you can have deployments on both chains, right? And you have to that's a long conversation about cross-chain messaging, which I think is out of scope for today. But if you are, let's say you have an NFT asset that is worth $100,000, but you have part of your ecosystem transactions that should cost pennies or fractions of pennies. Those don't have to necessarily on the same page at the application level, right? So like thinking about the optimal strategy is going to be complex over time. But I think right now the way we're thinking about it is the more cost sensitive stuff should go to an antitrust chain, and we're thinking obviously right now Nova's our deployment, and Arbitrum One will be the home of the more value sensitive and things that need higher liquidity as well, ecosystems.
Thanks. And then just one quick follow-up. So I was in Polygon really early days, where you could use one Gwei. Polygon was like 30 cents, so it was like a tenth of a penny or less to do a transaction. But as it got more and more usage, the RPCs just like got hit so hard, like websites started going down, the chain would like slow down, so they had to raise the minimum fee. Like, do you foresee this as an issue? Like, if Nova gets too much usage, do you think like fees will have to be raised because there's just transactions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the answer is fundamentally, like, by the laws of physics, there is some top capacity of any chain. It could be Ethereum, it could be Bitcoin, it could be Nova, it could be Polygon. And when you hit that top capacity, the fees will go up. And actually, for those of you that participated in the Arbitrum Odyssey, this is exactly what you saw, which was, we had on the current Arbitrum One stack a limit. We're throttling it and say we're not going to set more of this usage. Demand was significantly more than supply, and so the fees went up, which is exactly what you'd expect to happen. But that's obviously not the not the best user experience, and users don't want that. So what happens at that point? So the fees go up. You still scaled because you created a lot more available space, but obviously users want the fees to remain low. So the one thing I'll tell you about our team is, and just how you say, so you saw from the Odyssey itself, we don't make technical compromises. So what we said was, okay, we're going to pause the Odyssey till after Nitro. We didn't say, okay, we're going to go ahead and just crank up the capacity and degrade the network. We said, no, we're not doing that. And that's the one guarantee you'll have from our team, which is, we're going to put the tech out, as we have it, be honest about its trade-offs, and not sort of overclock it to a point where it becomes unsustainable. The good news is Arbitrum Nova is actually built on the Nitro stack. Nitro is like the technical stack that can do a roll chain. So Arbitrum Nova is built on it, and it's a very, very strong stack. And we have about 7x the capacity, so about 7 million gas per second on launch, and we're very, very very, very comfortable at those numbers, that the chain will operate well and continue to have really, really good performance. Now, the other good news is, our team is not sitting down and patting ourselves on the back and saying, okay, we built this chain, we increased the capacity massively, we're done. No, we're constantly back to the drawing board and back to the research board. In the same way, I'll tell you something interesting, which is we launched Arbitrum One, a year ago, and Arbitrum Nitro is going to be Arbitrum One is going to be migrated to Nitro a year later. The development for Arbitrum Nitro actually started just about the same time as the launch of Arbitrum One. And that's actually, you can look at the commits public. So Arbitrum One was launched August 31st, and the first commit in Nitro repo was September 2nd. So literally 2 days later. And I can assure you that the same way that exists, we have future initiatives now that say that are asking the question: how do we get more and more scale? How do we do it better without compromising the user experience? So we're confident with the additional multiple of capacity that Nitro gives us, is we're going to scale for a long time, and we're going to stay ahead of that curve. But if the space continues to grow as I think it's going to grow, we're absolutely going to hit the capacity, and we have more issues to solve and more scale to solve. That's why our team is not we're not closing up shop now. We're growing. We're hiring more people. By the way, shout out if you're a developer, a researcher, business, anything really that can contribute to this, marketing, you name it, community manager, join our team, because we're scaling up, because we have a lot more work to do to get to our final state. Not that we'll actually ever be in a final state, but and that's the good news. So we have, I think, a lot of runway now. But of course, what we're going to continue to work to extend that runway and make this really a global network that's able to operate on global scale. And it's a cat and mouse game, right? Scaling, you want to stay ahead of the curve. So you scale, and then demand comes, it catches up, and you want to basically keep the tech just ahead of the demand. I think we've done a pretty good job of that so far, and we're going to continue to execute and make sure we continue to really lead the way in terms of building scaling technology and paving that path.
Awesome. Thanks, Steven and AJ. And I look forward to Nitro and for stuff to be built on Nova.
Thank you.
Akon, how are you doing?
How you doing, Deez? What's up, Arbitrum? What's up, Steven, AJ, Size, Chad? Thanks for having me, and thanks for pulling me up in like a split second. Yeah, no, my question is a little bit more oriented towards, well, just to give a very, very brief background check on myself. So I'm more oriented towards pure games. As you see from my PFP, it's actually a mix between a orc, ETH orc, and a small. So just from that perspective, anyone who knows ETH orcs knows that they went from mainnet towards another that shall not be spoken. But the main question there is, can we see the same? Well, can we see it the same way as NFTs that we currently have on, let's say RB1 or Nitro, that will be soon, bridging the 721s or the 1155s toward Nova, right? And actually using them there. So just having them in a staked state, whether it's doubling them up or any other manner, and having them then bridge back. Is something like that already built in? Are there any plans towards that? Will this be case by case, project by project? How do you see this?
Yeah, so the answer is from a technological perspective, an NFT bridge is something that you can absolutely build, and we actually have prototypes built, but there are some different trade-offs you can make in NFT bridging. So, we're working with really some others on making sure that we're aligned on the right design. There are some third-party NFT bridges that I believe are already live. So again, fundamentally, yes, you can bridge back and forth between the chains, and again, these chains have a different security trade-off and a different security perspective. And by the way, I should mention it's more than prototype. We have on our testnet today. We have NFT bridges. We just that are there that are tested. It's just we want to make sure that those are right and people are using them, testing them before they commit to them and transfer assets over them. But that's already live and tested and a priority for our team. So that being said, there's another really interesting thing which I think you touched on, right? So there are different trade-offs in these chains, but it kind of makes sense for one project to sort of bridge the gap, if you will excuse my pun. And the answer is maybe, where you can imagine that you have an ecosystem where some of the high-level assets are parked and live long-term on say Arbitrum One, but some of the gaming or more frequent interactions in that ecosystem happen in Arbitrum Nova. I think that sort of design pattern makes a lot of sense for a lot of people, and we'll begin to see that. Similarly to you have today, even some projects have some of their core assets on Ethereum and only move some of them to a roll up. I think you'll be able to see this as well in a second order here, where maybe some of the assets stay on Arbitrum One, you can move them over. Imagine you have like a warrior, you can move your warrior over into the Nova land, game with it, do that, move it back to Arbitrum One if you want to keep it there. So I think it's both a project decision, but also a user decision where users can make their choice and where they want to keep them long term. Obviously, a lot of users will look to the projects and look to those that they trust to help them make that decision because they might not necessarily understand the entirety of the trade offs. But definitely, there's a big design space there, which I think we'll see explored coming weeks and months.
All right. Well, that's actually very interesting news. Well, first of all, in terms of that NFT bridge that is currently in this phase, is there any documentation or anything available to the public, especially for the testnet? I mean.
Yes, it is on our test net, and if you look at our GitHub repos, you will find it there. If you DM me, I can send you a link to it. But it definitely is on testnet, and happy to share you the repo that you want to take a look at. I don't think that considering that it's only on testnet, it's not built into our main docs page yet today, but it is in the public repos at the github.com/offchainlabs GitHub profile.
I will be slipping in your DM, Steven.
Excellent.
And actually, you nailed it when you said it like that. Well, when you said it earlier. Um, the way I see it is Nitro, or what would be at that moment kind of like mainnet, from an Arbitrum perspective, that'd be like your interface, your actual computer screen with a game. Well, if it is a game, purely looking from this perspective only, right? Or this case by case only. And the gameplay on Nova will be kind of like y- your game engine, your actual logic, your actual calculations being made, right? Due to the fact that it's a lot faster, that's a lot cheaper as well. It'll help out a lot, especially for people who are trying to create more on-chain games. So yeah, definitely kudos, guys. Well done.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, and looking forward to connecting later.
The GM, tag 'em and bag 'em, aka another small who I invited up from the crowd.
What up, guys? What up, Deez? What up, Size Chad? I was just curious, what else goes into? Is it just scale that is the biggest factor in onboarding these teams, or would you be able to just kind of go into sort of what the process is like when the teams may approach you and how you decide if it is a good fit or not, and maybe what happens next if you do or don't decide it would work with the product you guys are offering?
Sure, I can take that one. So you mean from our perspective or the team's perspectives?
From your guys.
Well, we're very inclusive, so we'll work with anyone, and it's us. It's really more a function of whether or not we like we talked about this earlier. Like we try to be extremely intellectually honest about whether or not a protocol makes sense for a team. So Sides and I spend a lot of time speaking with teams about that are mainly focused on gaming that have really high throughput demands. They want to design their game that in a way that they can abstract users and it won't from like transaction fees, and it wouldn't like sort of really affect the economics of the game, and that requires extremely low fee environments. So we've had many teams that we said, look, we would love for you to join the Arbitrum ecosystem. Here are the pluses and minuses of joining it, but just if you're on the roll up, it's going to be expensive and it's going to be hard for you to sort of strive for the UX that you want. So for the last few months before sort of we really started pushing Nova to the forefront, we were honest and told teams that there are other environments that would make more sense if your priorities are X. And there's other priorities. Obviously, there's a whole culture of grants and liquidity mining that a lot of teams sort of think about, and I think we're not gonna get into that today. But now that we have Nova live, we really focus on building out, the Off-Chain Labs brand, the Arbitrum brand is best in class scaling solutions. I think the ecosystem recognizes that. And when we only had the rollup product live, it didn't work for everyone. Now we're armed with, I think, the best in class solutions that are for gaming and social, and we're going to be aggressively sort of, working with teams to explain the advantage of scaling together with us. We're literally on day 2 of, maybe not even day 2, depending on what time you technically call it going live. But there's a great ecosystem that's forming. The Treasure DAO ecosystem, which obviously by your PM, assuming you're very familiar with, is a core part of the Arbitrum community. There's a great community existing on Arbitrum that's going to continue to grow, and that's our perspective on it. We provide the scale and the ecosystem and the culture, and work with partners to help them succeed. But we don't try to do it in a way that is not intellectually honest.
Cool. That adds a lot of detail. I appreciate it. And I was curious, I know Ed is speaking, but is there going to be a bigger presence or any sort of Arbitrum interaction with SmartCon coming up in December with the Chainlink team? And I'll hop off. That was my last question. Thank you, everybody. Love you guys.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks. Go ahead, Steven.
Ed is speaking. We are sponsoring, and stay tuned. We might be doing some more around there as well, but definitely we are going to be supportive in a very strong way. And you can come by if you're there and say hello to our team at the booth, or say hello to Catch Ed as well.
Cool. I'll be there. See you guys then.
Awesome.
Also, GMJN, how are you doing?
GM, I'm doing good. I'm doing well. Just finishing up my physical therapy. Say hello and listen to the announcement and all of this insights on Arbitrum. Super exciting stuff. But I'm doing well. Thanks for inviting me up and thanks for having me. I've been chatting a lot with Side Chat and the Arbitrum team, kind of on how to get artists more excited about the Arbitrum ecosystem. I know that's kind of where I approach the space as an artist. And I know a lot of artists in my communities have been like experimenting on other layer 1s and layer 2s, but I don't think we've seen so much of that happening on Arbitrum. And I wanted to what would your advice be to artists listening that one, they might not be familiar with Arbitrum. I am, because of the treasure ecosystem and a lot of the gaming stuff that goes on. So I love it, and I'm looking forward to doing some stuff with the team. But to the artists listening, what would be your advice on how they could get involved with Arbitrum, or what do you think? What would you tell them, on why they should be minting on Arbitrum? I should say.
Yeah, I'll start, and Size or Steven, jump in if you want anything to add. So I think what a really important place to start is the education of what we're trying to do primarily, which is scale Ethereum, because the EVM is a moat. and everybody in the mind share is with Ethereum. I know Solana's obviously been a growing ecosystem lately, but the overwhelming majority of people are really excited about the Ethereum ecosystem, not just from like a developer and technical perspective, community values perspective, decentralization perspective, and also, what's important for artists, especially, as they want to sell their art, liquidity. So all of those things point to remaining within the Ethereum ecosystem. I think that's a really important place to start. What are the values of Ethereum, both from a community perspective and a technical perspective? And then it's about appreciating, well, how does Ethereum scale, right? Because Ethereum, if we're talking like in 5 years from now, and people are still using Ethereum layer one, I think we've all failed. And I think that the community recognizes that as a whole. And it's understanding that there's roll-up technologies, there's obviously NHS technologies, there's all of these different solutions that exist about how to scale Ethereum. So if we're talking about like sort of that as the guiding principle, it's really about how do we keep people within that ecosystem. And Arbitrum is, I'll talk about the rollup for a second, less about Nova. The Arbitrum rollup ecosystem, I think, is probably the best in the sense that there's huge community mindshare, early adopters, people with strong liquidity, people who have real appreciation for Ethereum that are living there. Has the movement been, comparatively slow? Yes, I think still most activity happens on Ethereum. But aligning with those values in, the long run and even in the short run, I think are extremely important. There's trade-offs, if you want to interact with the blockchain, there's trade-offs that you always have to make. And the Ethereum ecosystem's trade-offs of not compromising on decentralization, I think, have been the most important decisions that have been made in terms of scaling roadmaps. So Arbitrum specifically, I think we have to do a better job, and this is a community call to action. I know, Jan, we've spoken about this a lot, about sort of like, how we can onboard artists and make them feel comfortable and, include in the ecosystem, have all the tools that they need. That's a community effort that we have to continue building on. But sticking and thinking about the core focus of how do we stick to the values that we're trying to contribute to of decentralization and security is a great place to start when having that conversation. Because if those aren't the tenets that you believe in, right, the slippery slope is ultimately like, why do you need blockchain at the end of the day? Obviously, there's a spectrum to that, but those are the values we believe in. I think that's the core values driving the Arbitrum ecosystem, and not just from a technical perspective, but from a community perspective. I know, Size, Stephen, if you have anything you want to add to that, but that's sort of the things that I want.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think AJ on, having the tools for artists to succeed on Arbitrum. I think that, in the future, there's a chance that we'll be, live on some of the marketplaces that they want to do their drops on. And even though, not to discredit, the current NFT marketplaces, obviously Treasure Trove, Stratos, Tofu, etc. But I think that one other thing from an artist perspective is that, we really want to take the initiative to kind of support artists at a grassroots level and kind of, build this community because, I think we've always been a company that's really, really focused on the tech and getting that ready, and then kind of worrying about everything else after that. So I think that we're really, really in a good position right now to take these strides and really growing our community and supporting artists at a grassroots level.
Amazing, yeah, that answers it perfectly. And I think I asked, I kind of knew the answer to a lot of this, but I know a lot of artists in my communities kind of just don't understand that, doing things on Arbitrum is doing things on Ethereum. So that was perfect, AJ. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you all to kind of onboard more artists.
Yeah, and like I said, Jay, we're always here for the ecosystem, and if it's helpful, we're happy to do something dedicated, Q&A for the Animus chat or anybody else who really wants to ask all the tough questions and think about the journey, because the Rome wasn't built in a day, and the way we're scaling rollups, especially everything right now has been truly organic. It takes time, but we're confident that we have the right roadmap for a sustainable community.
I'm so fucking bullish. Every time we talk, I just get more and more excited about Arbitrum. I just feel like everything you say is the right thing to say every time. and it's very refreshing to just hear these words come out of your mouth. Like I don't know, I just every single time we have a chat, I just start thinking to myself, like, yeah, these guys know exactly what the fuck they're doing, and like they're thinking correctly about the space.
I
Yeah,
have no
same.
idea what I'm doing, but thank you.
The more it's the same way. Like the more I dive into it, the more bullish I get. So definitely echo that.
Yeah, I know we are coming up on the top of the hour, and we didn't have a hard stop, but I am super respectful of Steven, AJ, Sideshad's time. I will open up the last round of questions just for the people. We don't have any other requests, but I want to make sure if any.
I actually have to drop. I apologize. I
Oh,
don't
no,
know if others can stay on, but this was awesome. Thanks so much for hosting. This was great, and you know, thanks so much. And if anyone has any questions, you know, Discord, DMs, you know, love to chat. Thanks, everyone.
And I'll
Thanks.
stay. If anyone else has one, I'm happy to stay for it.
Yeah, and for the people who join late as well, there's going to be a recording of this from the start available after the space is over. So if you missed it or came in late, just after the space is done, go back to the link and you'll be able to listen to the whole space as well. I don't see any requests popping up though, so it might be a good time to wrap here. But yeah, thanks again, Size, Steven, as always, for coming on and talking about the updates. I'm so excited to see what comes out of Nova, especially on the gaming front. As somebody who just spent like 12 to 16 hours a day video games for most of their life, I definitely understand all the users that we can potentially acquire through delivering a good experience while giving people ownership of their in-game assets. So I am so fucking bullish on that. I know it takes time, but as you said, Rome wasn't built in a day, and I know we will get there eventually. So in the meantime, I just am excited to keep building alongside you guys and keep vibing.
Thank you, Deez, for hosting us. Always so great to hang out with you. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thanks everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.